You're listening to the International Moving Podcast, your guide to moving to another country, brought to you by SDC International Shipping, LA's finest. An international move is exciting. It's a time to start over, establish a new business maybe, reestablish family ties, or retire where your budget will do more for you. Please enjoy today's episode, and if you have any questions about your international move, give us a call at 888-779-3962. That's 888-779-3962. All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Jim for SDC International Shipping. Today we're going to jump right in. We're going to talk about the topic of moving internationally. We're going to look at what you might call the 20,000-foot overview of the entire subject. And I think this is a great topic for today because here we are in 2024. It's true that things change from year to year. And so every once in a while, you have to get back to the basics when you're going to do and plan something, especially if you've never done it before, and just have a complete overview of all of the different moving parts, what you need to focus on, what you can hand off to someone else for them to take care of, and just know where you are at any given time in the entire process. So I think that this topic would start out perfectly if we started with the topic of understanding the overall scope of your move. It's one thing to move across town, another thing to move across state, and another thing to move across country. But when we're talking about moving out of the country, we're talking about a completely different kind of scenario that brings other things into play that would not be in play with, let's say, an ordinary, average, everyday move. So let's talk about understanding the scope of your move. Now, if you're not moving, that's fine because this will give you an overview or something that you can sort of tuck away maybe on the back burner of your mind. And maybe this is something that you will actually step into 12 months from now, 24 months from now, in the not too distant future. So at least you'll have an understanding of how all of this works. Now, moving out of the country isn't just, of course, about packing your bags, hopping on a plane, and getting to your destination. Overall, it is a fairly complex process that involves numerous steps from sorting and packing of your belongings to understanding the customs regulations that might affect you moving into a new country. So, probably the easiest way to start this entire process would be by creating a comprehensive moving checklist. If you have a checklist, then you can include on this every task that you need to complete before the move, such as maybe obtaining necessary documents, things like canceling or transferring different services that you're paying for, notifying all the relevant authorities that you're connected with about your move. And when you break down these tasks into manageable steps, and maybe you take it a step further and set deadlines for when you're going to accomplish each of these items, then it really helps and goes a long way towards ensuring that you're staying on track. There's nothing worse than overwhelm. I know everybody is familiar with what it's like to be overwhelmed with a project that's just so big that you don't know where to start. And so starting with a checklist is great because it enables you to see everything. And when you write something down, now maybe you're going to do this in a Word document, or if you use Apple, one of their products, there's probably more software programs and apps to make lists and tasks today than there's ever been before. But if you just want to do it simply, well, to me this is simple, you just get a notebook and you write everything down. It can be a small one that you can carry with you, and as something comes to mind, you just open it up and you write that task down and you do it that way. Sometimes the old-fashioned way is a little easier also because you don't have to worry about getting into an app, or maybe you don't have your phone on you at that moment, or your tablet with you, or you're not close to a computer, and so you have to commit it to memory. You know what I'm talking about. Now, if you're a little bit younger, of course, you've grown up with apps and devices, but I'm just throwing it out there. Sometimes it's just as easy to have a small notebook that you can bring with you everywhere. You don't have to worry about it getting dirty or dusty or even getting wet or falling into water. You know what I'm talking about. It's just one of those things that creates less stress, let's say. Okay, so let's talk a little bit we're talking about writing the tasks down that need to be managed, setting deadlines for them so that you can see where you are at any time in the process. I know for myself, I've probably dropped the ball in this area relative to tasks more than anything else. Certain things I do repetitively over and over again in my daily life, and so it's almost habitual. But when you introduce something new into your day, something that you're not used to doing all the time, this is where task management can become a little bit overwhelming. So as you begin to write these things down, next we move on to the research of the new destination. So this is a critical step because you need to learn as much as you can about the country you'll be moving to because it's going to affect you in a real way every single day. This includes things like understanding the local culture, the language if necessary, as well as customs. Familiarize yourself with things like the cost of living there, how their healthcare system works and how you can navigate that, educational opportunities if you have children, how that might apply. There are many online forums and many social media groups for expats in whatever destination country you're thinking about going to. These communities can provide valuable insights and tips from people who've already gone through the process you're thinking about going through. So probably Facebook would be one of the big places you could find these kinds of communities on social media. There's probably groups on Reddit and other places like that also. And the people in these communities, while you can't always, you don't want to exchange the advice of, let's say, a lawyer or a certified public accountant for the advice of somebody in a group who is not in that position or not in that profession, but they can give you good information that maybe you won't get from an attorney or something to think about or an accountant. And I say that simply because there's a disclaimer here. Now, this is just my personal opinion. This is just based on my personal experience. But there have been times where there have been some simple legal forms that I was capable of filling out myself. In some cases, you can buy these forms or download them online and save hundreds, if not more, of dollars rather than hiring an attorney to do it for you. Now, this depends on what type of situation you're talking about. It's going to differ from person to person, but certain things can fall into the do-it-yourself category, and again, you can save quite a bit of money. As a matter of fact, just in a little personal anecdote here, there is a form that I needed to fill out for something relative to real estate, and if I fill it out myself and bring it to the county clerk's office, I think it'll be under $100. Whereas, and there's just about a half a dozen, maybe more lines to fill out of information on the form. Whereas if I have the average attorney do it and they file it from their office, it's going to cost between $500 and $600. So that's what I mean about things that you can do and that you may not be aware of. Now, of course, the attorney's not going to tell you that, oh, you could do this yourself for a quarter of what I'm going to charge you, unless maybe they're a personal friend or you're related to them, in which case that's a different story. But you know what I'm talking about. There are some things that you can do for yourself to save yourself a little bit of money. And you can find out what these things are sometimes easier when you are part of an online community, talking to people who've already spent the money, who've already gone through the process and have learned from experience. Next, we can talk about sorting and decluttering. I think one of the most challenging aspects of any move is deciding what you're going to take with you and what you're going to leave behind. And this is especially so when you're moving internationally. This decision can become a very critical one because in certain situations, shipping costs can be a lot higher, and you may find that some of your belongings are no longer practical or necessary in your new home. For example, let's take something large like moving an automobile. Depending on where your location, your destination country is, certain times it just doesn't make sense to move a car or a motorcycle into a country unless you have a really good reason to do so. Maybe it's an antique worth a lot of money, little reasons like that, which really don't apply to the average person. In such cases, like for example, moving to the Philippines is a good example of this. It makes a lot more sense for the average person to sell their vehicle, car, motorcycle, whatever it happens to be, rather than to pay all of the import fees and taxes and customs that go with bringing that vehicle into the country, because when you're done, it's going to cost you probably 3 to 4 times what that vehicle is actually worth to you. That goes for cars, trucks, motorcycles, and so on. So that's one of the things that you have to keep in mind as you're researching the new destination and as you're entering that place where you're starting to determine how you're going to declutter your belongings and get rid of the things that you really don't need to take with you. Some things maybe you're going to keep, but others maybe it makes more sense to donate them or sell them or just throw them out. And I've learned from doing this myself, just with local moves, sometimes you have to be ruthless in your decluttering process. So just remember, the less that you take with you, the easier and cheaper your move can be. So maybe it's time to have a garage sale and to use some online marketplaces and sell the items you no longer need. Next, choosing the right international moving company. Choosing the right international moving company is going to be critical to the success of your move. So you want to look for a company with a proven track record in handling household international relocations. SDC International Shipping, for instance, is focused on removing the hassles from their customers' plates by providing comprehensive moving services. So, for example, if you don't want to pack, packing services are available to you. You don't have to touch a box. Packing, shipping, customs clearance, delivery, temporary storage, all of those things are available to you if you need a total white glove service type of situation. So if you're elderly or there's elderly people involved and they're just not in a place where they can lift boxes any longer, you don't have to worry. Those services are available to you all in one package, all from a single company. Also, you want to ensure that the company that you choose is licensed and insured. Read reviews, ask for some references to gauge their reliability and their customer service. And don't be afraid to ask questions about how the process works, how the timelines work, and any potential additional costs. A good company like SDC International Shipping will be very straightforward about all of the above. Next, understanding customs regulations. Well, if you hire a company like SDC, of course, they're already well versed in customs regulations, and so they can answer a lot of those questions for you, because customs regulations can be one of the most complex aspects of an international move. Every country has its own set of rules regarding what you can and cannot be brought into the country. And sometimes those rules are, I've seen them for a few countries, not to go into details, but it's just surprising sometimes what can't be brought into a country. So it's important to research these regulations well in advance, because you don't want to have any surprises at, let's say, customs at the border. So make a list of items that are restricted or prohibited in your destination country. Be aware of them. This can include certain foods and plants to certain types of electronics and vehicles. And then you work very closely with your moving company to ensure that all the necessary paperwork is completed accurately and on time, and that you have all of that in place. Now, packing for an international move, if you do it yourself, not to say that you can't. There are pros and cons to probably every choice that you have in front of you, but packing for an international move requires careful planning and organization, and that's especially so if you've never done it before. But if you are going to do it yourself, then you have to gather all of the packing materials that you'll need: boxes, bubble wrap, packing tape, and you don't want to skimp here, as tempting as it may be, to save a little bit of money, because we're talking about a long distance move. You're going to want to label each box with its contents and the room that it belongs in your new home, because this will make the unpacking much easier. Or, well, let me just add here also, fragile or valuable items, even if you are going to do the packing of the other stuff, consider using a professional packer for things like that. So companies like SDC International Shipping, they offer expert packing services. They'll build and create specialty items like artwork and things that are extra fragile to make sure that they're well protected for your move. And also, when it comes to insurance, in order to insure certain items, most insurance companies, I think, actually, I should say all insurance companies, will want you to use a professional packer at the very least for those items, because an item can be broken because it was improperly packed. And so at the very least, if you're going to insure certain valuable items, you will have to pay a professional packing service, and that's one of the services offered by SDC. Okay, let's talk about managing finances and legalities. If you're going to make an international move, of course, managing your finances and legal matters are all the way at the top of the to-do list. You'll have to notify your bank of the move and inquire about international banking options that are available to you. You may need to open a bank account in your new country beforehand to facilitate some transactions and manage your finances more easily. In addition, make sure that all your legal documents are in order. This may include things like, of course, your passport and your visa. You'll need that, and any other necessary permits that might apply to you. Make copies of important documents, store them in a safe place, and have copies available also that you can easily access at any time during the move, from the trip over to the moment you're arriving there. In other words, you just want to plan ahead of time. No one may ask for certain things, but it's always good to have a copy available, at least so you can show someone. It's like recently I was in a situation where I had to provide paperwork for some type of process that I was doing, and I thought beforehand, I wonder if this paper needs to be notarized or not in order for it to be considered valid. I looked into the situation and they said no, it doesn't, but I thought, just in case, you just never know who you're going to be dealing with, I decided let's go ahead and notarize this so that I don't have to question, or they won't question, whether these signatures are valid or not, because the people involved in this process weren't going to be physically present with me when I had this document. So that's just an example that I'm throwing out there based on, some of the things I've experienced myself. Sometimes it's better to be a little bit over-prepared and have some contingency plans in line just in case something unusual happens. And that's one of the things about unusual things happening. We don't really think about them a lot of times, but I think it's better to be over-prepared than under-prepared. Okay, settling into your new home. Once you arrived at your new destination, you're going to settle into your new home. You're going to unpack your belongings systematically, put them away over a course of probably days, because you're going to be a little bit tired most likely when you get there. A lot of things are happening. You can pay companies like SDC, of course. They can unpack and put everything away for you if that's a service that you would like to have that's available. So you can just unpack your essential items and certain things and have them set up and take your time unpacking the rest. In other words, you can set it up any way that you'd like. Then, we can talk about other things like adjusting to the new culture. Even if you've been there on vacation or you've spent a month or two there, there's going to be so many things that are going to be new to you, things that you've never thought about. It's one thing to go to a place on vacation. It's another thing to move there. And if you've ever moved any distance at all in your lifetime, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's pros and cons that go with every type of relocation, and that's just part of life. But when it comes to a new culture, maybe it is worth, if English is not the primary language there, knowing it a little bit. It all depends on your situation. For example, I don't speak Spanish. I speak English. I live in the United States. But every once in a while, I meet people I'm trying to communicate with. They speak Spanish and they don't speak English. And I thought, maybe it would have been good to pay better attention in high school to those Spanish courses that I took that I forgot about. The same thing with the Italian language. A lot of my friends are Italian. Sometimes I wish that I would have learned to speak Italian. It's great to be able to speak more than one language. I've experimented with several of them: German, Italian, French, Spanish. But unless you have someone to talk to on a regular basis with them, you kind of lose it. You lose that familiarity. And so now if you're in another location, another country, where English is not the primary language, then of course you have more motivation and more opportunity to not only learn but become comfortable with the basics of that language. A little bit can go a long way when it comes to that. So now just let me end this with just sharing some thoughts. I spoke with Rob, one of the people at SDC International Shipping that's involved in the day-to-day procedures. I want to share some insights that I had from that conversation with you because Rob highlighted several key points that can really be helpful when it comes to an international move. First, he emphasized the importance of starting your preparations early. He recommended beginning the process at least 3 months in advance because that will allow ample time for everything that needs to be done. Sorting, packing, handling all of the necessary paperwork. Of course, this is considering people who are in that place where they're already committed to making the move. They have a job lined up or their company is going to transfer them. So now we're in the place where we're looking to actually step into the shipping process itself. So 3 months in advance gives you a lot of time to sort things out, get rid of things, sell things, and get all the necessary paperwork in order. He also shared with me the significance of understanding personally the specific customs regulations of your destination country because, as I said earlier, each country has its own set of rules and it's crucial to know what items are restricted or prohibited. So Rob mentioned that SDC International Shipping, they provide detailed guidance to help customers navigate these regulations smoothly. So you can call SDC International Shipping. You can reach out to people like Rob or Timothy. They really have a great staff because they are committed to customer satisfaction, customer service. Another important aspect that we talked about was the use of professional packing services. So when you have an expert packer and they're using the high quality materials and the techniques that they use to ensure that belongings are protected during transit, it really does give you a whole nother level, a whole nother layer when it comes to peace of mind, knowing that your items are going to be in safe hands. And he also highlighted the advantage of having a dedicated moving coordinator. At SDC, each customer is assigned a coordinator who oversees the entire moving process, providing that personalized support that most people need and addressing any concerns that may arise at any time during the process. And this level of customer service will help to alleviate the stress and uncertainty that will often accompany an international move. And lastly, he did talk about the importance of staying connected with loved ones during the transition. So it always helps to have a friendly voice on the other side of your cell phone, someone that you're talking to, some friends letting them know what's going on, how you're doing, so you don't have that feeling of isolation like, oh my gosh, all my stuff is in crates and boxes and being moved and it's just me and my family now, or kind of all on our own. No, maybe that would have been true in the past, but now, today, we have all of these devices. It's easier to stay connected than it's ever been before, even during the actual transition process of items being loaded on boats and planes, however you choose to make your move. And you set up regular communication schedules using the different platforms that are available. If you have Zoom is great. You can jump on a call with someone. You can even use your phone to do it. So all of these things come together and they just make the process of moving internationally just much easier today than it's ever been before. So let me conclude by saying thanks as always for joining me for today's podcast episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope the tips and the insights will help you prepare for a successful international move, whether it be in the immediate future over the next several months before 2024 is out, or in the not too distant future within the next 12 to 24 months. And remember, if you have any questions or you need any assistance, don't hesitate to visit SDC International Shipping's website at www.sdcinternationalshipping.com. You can also chat live with one of SDC's representatives on their website for personal support or have whatever questions you need answered. All right, that'll do it for today. This is Jim. Thanks for listening, and I will see you in next week's episode. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for listening. Whether you're relocating within the country or moving to the other side of the world, we're here to help from start to finish. Connect with us today at 888-779-3962. That's 888-779-3962.